The life of a businessman, living in luxury and power, turns upside down when a 12-year-old girl appears claiming to be his daughter. She tells a heartbreaking story of abandonment and neglect, revealing she was left behind by her stepmother. The day began like any other for Henry Miller. At 42, he was one of New York City's most influential businessmen, owner of Miller Developments, one of the country's largest construction companies. His office, high atop a skyscraper on Fifth Avenue, offered a privileged view of the city he had helped shape with his luxury ventures. That Monday morning, Henry arrived early, as usual. His routine was meticulously planned by his efficient secretary, Teresa, who awaited him with a strong cup of coffee and the day's printed agenda. "Good morning, Mr. Miller," Teresa greeted, handing him the coffee. "You have a meeting with investors at 9, lunch with the mayor at noon, and in the afternoon the presentation of the new project in the Hamptons." Henry nodded, barely paying attention. He was accustomed to that routine. Busy days, important appointments, decisions that moved millions. His life was predictable in its unpredictability. The ordered chaos of big business. "Oh, and there's a young woman at reception. She insists on speaking with you. She says it's a personal and very important matter." Henry frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone, much less for personal matters. His private life was practically non-existent. Since his divorce from Felicity 6 years ago, he had lived for work. "Who is she? Does she have a name?" "Yes, sir. She identified herself as Claire. Claire Miller." Something in Henry's stomach churned upon hearing that surname. Miller wasn't such a common name, and he had no close relatives in the city. "Send her in," he finally ordered, more curious than willing to attend to the stranger. Minutes later, the office door opened. Henry looked up from the papers he was pretending to read and felt as if he had been punched in the chest. Before him stood a girl of approximately 12 years old, thin with long disheveled brown hair, wearing simple and somewhat worn clothes. But it was her eyes that paralyzed him. Intense green eyes that seemed to pierce his soul. Eyes he knew well, eyes he saw every day when he looked in the mirror. "Hi, Dad," she said, with a mixture of shyness and determination that disconcerted him even more. Henry remained still, words completely escaping him. The girl took a step forward, her hands clutching the strap of the small backpack she carried. "You don't recognize me, do you? I'm Claire. Your daughter." I don't have a daughter," Henry finally managed to stammer, although something inside him knew he was lying to himself. Claire smiled sadly. "Yes, you do. You just never really knew me. Felicity didn't let you." His ex-wife's name made Henry straighten in his chair. Felicity Alvarez had been his wife for almost 5 years, a marriage that began like a fairy tale and ended in a cold divorce settlement. They had had no children, or at least that's what he had always believed. "Please, sit down." He gestured mechanically to the chair opposite his desk, while his brain tried to process what was happening. Claire obeyed, placing her backpack on her lap, as if it were a shield. Her eyes never left Henry's. "Where is your mother? Why are you here alone?" "I don't know where she is now. Probably at home with Robert, her husband." Claire spoke with a maturity that didn't match her age. "I ran away from home 3 days ago. I had to come look for you." Henry's throat felt dry. "Ran away? Why?" Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back, taking a deep breath before continuing. "Because I couldn't live there anymore. Ever since you and Mom separated, things got very difficult for me. After she married Robert, it got even worse. They don't like me." Henry tried to organize his thoughts. He looked at the girl, searching for Felicity's features in her, but he could only see himself reflected in that young face. How could he not know about the existence of a daughter? He felt a wave of anger rise within him, but he held it back. "Claire, I didn't know about you. Your mother never told me she was pregnant when we separated." "I know," the girl replied with a comprehension that surprised him again. "She told me she hid the pregnancy from you. She said you didn't want children, that it would hinder your career. That's what she always told me." The businessman felt as if the ground had opened beneath his feet. It was true that his career was taking off at the time of the divorce, but he would never reject a child of his own. How could Felicity hide something so important from him? How could she deprive him of knowing his own daughter? "But that's not true, Claire. I never knew you existed. If I had known—" "It's okay," she interrupted him with a slight shrug that seemed to carry the weight of the world. I grew up believing you didn't want me, but then I started to realize something was wrong. Mom always got nervous when I asked about you, and after she remarried, she started treating me differently, as if I were a problem, a reminder of something she wanted to forget. Henry listened intently, feeling a knot form in his throat. The pieces were starting to fit together. Felicity had always been an ambitious, calculating woman. She ended the marriage claiming that he suffocated her with his dedication to work, that she wanted to live other experiences. He never imagined she was pregnant, that she had hidden a daughter from him. How long have you been living with your mother and... This, Robert? 5 years. They got married when I was 7. At first he pretended to be nice to me, but then he started ignoring me as if I didn't even exist. Mom also changed. She started going out more, leaving me alone. When she was home, she only argued with me, saying I was just like you, stubborn and difficult. The anger Henry felt was almost unbearable. To imagine his daughter, being mistreated, neglected, while he lived completely oblivious to her existence was too much to bear. And what happened for you to run away? Claire looked away for the first time, fixing her gaze on her own hands. Last week, I heard them talking about sending me to a boarding school upstate. Mom said I was too much trouble, that it would be better for me to be away. I got scared. She looked up, and the vulnerability in her eyes made Henry's heart clench. So I looked in her office and found some old papers with your name on them. It had your address and the company's. I took the money I'd been saving from my birthday and came to look for you. Henry stood up abruptly, unable to remain seated. He walked to the window, observing the city stretching out below, trying to regain control of his emotions. His mind was in a turmoil. He had a daughter he never knew, who grew up believing she had been rejected by him, who was now here asking for help. He turned to face her again. Claire remained seated, observing him with those eyes so similar to his own. Eyes that carried a pain and a maturity that no child should have. Where have you been sleeping these 3 days? Claire hesitated. In a small hotel near the bus station. The money is running out. Henry ran a hand over his face, trying to think. He needed to act, and fast. He couldn't simply send the girl back to a home where she wasn't welcome. But he also couldn't simply accept her into his life without confirming that she was truly his daughter, although his heart already knew the truth. Claire, I'm going to help you. First, we'll do a DNA test to officially confirm that I'm your father. Then I'll contact your mother. She must be worried. She probably hasn't even noticed I left, Claire murmured with bitterness. She's always busy with her parties and trips. Henry felt his heart clench again. How could anyone neglect their own daughter like that? He had always believed that Felicity, despite her flaws, would be a good mother. Another illusion shattered. Either way, we need to inform her. It's the law, but I promise I won't let you go back there if you don't want to. He approached and, after a moment's hesitation, knelt before her, getting to her eye level. I promise I'll take care of you, Claire. If you really are my daughter, and I believe you are, I will never abandon you again. Claire's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she didn't hold them back. Tears streamed down her young face as she nodded, a small smile appearing on her lips. Can I have a hug? She asked, her voice choked. Without answering, Henry enveloped her in his arms, feeling the girl's fragile body tremble against his. Something inside him broke and mended in that moment. A certainty formed in his heart. This child was his daughter, and he would do anything to protect her. Chapter 2. Buried Truths. Henry couldn't concentrate on work. After the encounter with Claire, he had cancelled all his appointments for the day and taken the girl to his apartment on the Upper East Side, one of New York City's most exclusive neighborhoods. The place, decorated by a famous interior designer, was spacious and elegant, but it had something impersonal about it, as if it were an extension of a luxury hotel, without marks or traces of a life truly lived there. As Claire timidly explored the apartment, Henry made a few calls. The first was to his lawyer, Maurice Barnes, explaining the situation and asking him to arrange an urgent DNA test, as well as investigate the legal implications of the situation. The second was to his housekeeper, Mrs. Hilda, asking her to buy clothes and necessary items for a 12-year-old girl. The third, and most difficult, was to his ex-wife. Felicity Alvarez, answered a familiar voice on the other end of the line. Say a voice he had once loved, but which now caused him a feeling of discomfort and anger. "Felicity, it's Henry. We need to talk urgently." There was a moment of silence before she responded. "Henry, what happened? Why are you calling me after so many years?" "Claire is with me," he replied directly without beating around the bush. Another silence, longer this time. When Felicity spoke again, her voice was strained. "What are you talking about? Please, Felicity, no games. Our daughter Claire is here in my apartment. She ran away from your house 3 days ago and came to me. I'm in shock to discover I have a 12-year-old daughter whom you hid from me all this time." "She shouldn't be there," Felicity finally said, her voice cold. "I'm coming to get her right now." "No, you're not," Henry retorted, firm. "First we'll talk like adults. Claire told me very disturbing things about how she's been treated by you and your husband. We'll do a DNA test, although I have no doubt she's my daughter, and then we'll discuss the legal situation. Until then, she stays with me." "You can't do that. I'm her mother. I have custody. Custody you obtained by deceiving me, by hiding the existence of my own daughter. I'm sure a judge will be very interested in that story, Felicity." The veiled threat did not go unnoticed. Felicity lowered her voice. "Henry, you don't understand. I had my reasons." What reasons could justify depriving a father of knowing his own daughter, and worse, neglecting a child to the point where she has to run away from home? He took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "Look, I'm not going to discuss this over the phone. I'll meet you tomorrow at Morris's office at 2 in the afternoon. He's already aware of the situation. If you don't show up, I'll go to the police and Child Protective Services." Without waiting for a response, he hung up. His body trembled slightly with anger and adrenaline. He turned to find Claire standing at the living room door, watching him with frightened eyes. "Is she going to take me away?" The fragility in her voice completely disarmed him. In just a few hours, that girl had become the most important thing in his life. "No, Claire. I promise I won't let that happen." Later, after Mrs. Hilda arrived with bags of clothes and basic items for Claire, and after the girl took a bath and changed, they sat down for dinner. Henry had ordered food from a nearby restaurant, realizing that his practically empty refrigerator didn't offer many options. As they ate, he observed Claire, noticing how she ate slowly, politely, but with evident appetite. "Do you always eat so little at home?" he asked when he saw her hesitate to serve herself again. Claire shrugged. "I usually eat alone. Mom and Robert always go out for dinner. The maid leaves my food separate in the fridge." Another stab in Henry's heart. Imagining a child dining alone night after night while her mother went out with her stepfather was too painful. "And at school? How is it there?" Claire's face lit up a little. "It's nice. I like science and literature classes. I have some friends." Then her face grew serious again. "But it's difficult when there are parent-teacher conferences. Mom never goes. She always sends someone from her office. It's embarrassing." Henry felt the anger rise again, but he tried not to show it. "Well, that's going to change now. I promise I'll be present at your school meetings from now on." The smile Claire gave him was worth more than all the successful deals of his career. After dinner, while Claire was taking a bath, Henry received a call from Maurice. "Henry, I spoke with some colleagues and managed to schedule the DNA test for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. As for the legal situation, it's complicated but not impossible. If the test confirms paternity, we can immediately file for joint custody, alleging maternal negligence." "And what about her running away? Can I get into trouble for having her here?" "Technically, yes, but given the context, if the girl confirms she ran away due to mistreatment, and you as the biological father took her in, no judge would go against that. We just need to formalize the situation as soon as possible." After hanging up, Henry prepared the guest room for Claire. He had never hosted children in his home before, and the environment wasn't exactly welcoming for someone her age. He made a mental note to transform the room into something more appropriate as quickly as possible. "Is everything okay for you here?" he asked when the girl came out of the bath, wearing new pajamas with flower prints that Mrs. Hilda had bought. Claire looked around the impeccably tidy but cold room. "Yes, it's great. Better than at home." The simplicity of the answer hit him like a punch. What kind of life had that child led until now? "Claire," he began, sitting on the edge of the bed, "I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'll be here for you. I know we just met, and you must be confused and scared, but I want you to know you can count on me." Claire nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you. I always wanted to meet you. Mom had some pictures of you, hidden in a drawer. I would look at them and imagine what it would be like if you were with me." Henry felt a knot in his throat. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you. If I had known—" "It wasn't your fault," she interrupted him, surprising him once again with her maturity. "Mom never told you. She told me that once when she was drunk. She said she did it to punish you for choosing work over her." The revelation was like a lightning bolt, illuminating the darkness. Suddenly everything made sense. Felicity had always been proud and vengeful. When he refused her proposal to sell everything and travel the world, preferring to dedicate himself to the company that was beginning to grow, she decided the marriage was over. The divorce was quick and cold. He never imagined she was pregnant, that she would use her own daughter as an instrument of revenge against him. "We're going to fix this, Claire. I promise. Tomorrow we'll do a DNA test, just to formalize it, and then we'll talk to your mother. I want you to know that you don't have to go back there if you don't want to." Claire bit her lip, looking nervous. "What if she forces me? She's my mom. She has custody." "Don't worry about that now. My lawyer is already handling it. And believe me, Felicity won't want to make this public. She's always been very concerned about her image." After Claire fell asleep, Henry went to his home office. He wouldn't be able to sleep. His mind was too agitated. He opened his laptop and began researching everything he could about parental rights, joint custody, and how to proceed in cases of child neglect. Hours passed as he absorbed information, took notes, and strategized. Around 3 a.m, he received an email from Maurice with preliminary documents to sign should the DNA test confirm paternity. As he read the documents, his cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello? Henry, it's Robert." Robert Avalar, Felicity's husband. The man's arrogant tone immediately irritated Henry. "What do you want?" "It's 3 a.m. I want you to understand one thing. You're not taking Claire from us. Felicity is devastated by this whole situation. The girl has always been problematic, a liar. Whatever she told you about how she was treated here, it's a lie." Henry felt his blood boil. "Listen here, Robert. I don't know what kind of game you and Felicity are playing, but it's over. Claire is my daughter, and I have every right to know her and be a part of her life. If you really cared about her, you wouldn't be calling at 3 a.m. to threaten, but rather concerned about her well-being. You don't know anything, Miller. You don't know this girl. She's manipulating you, just like she tries to manipulate everyone around her." "I'm delighted to hear how you talk about a 12-year-old child," Henry retorted, with sarcasm. "This confirms everything Claire told me about the welcoming environment you provide her. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to rest for the DNA test tomorrow. I suggest you and Felicity prepare your lawyers." He hung up the phone, more determined than ever to protect Claire. Robert's call only confirmed what the girl had said. They didn't care about her. They saw her as a problem, not as a child who needed love and support. The next morning, Henry woke early despite the restless night. He found Claire already awake, sitting in the living room, leafing through an architecture magazine he had left on the coffee table. "Good morning," he said, trying to sound casual, as if having a 12-year-old daughter at home was routine for him. "Did you sleep well?" Claire nodded, closing the magazine. "Yes, the bed is comfortable." She hesitated for a moment before adding, "I had a strange dream that Mom came to get me and took me away." Henry felt a pang in his chest. "It was just a dream, Claire. I won't let anyone take you against your will." After a breakfast prepared by Mrs. Hilda, who arrived early and seemed delighted with Claire's presence, they went to the clinic recommended by Maurice. The procedure was quick and simple, a saliva sample from both which would be analyzed urgently. The result would be available in 48 hours, but Henry already knew what it would show. There was no denying their kinship. Claire was his spitting image when he was young, except for the darker hair and inheritance from Felicity. As they left the clinic, Henry noticed Claire was tense. "Is everything okay?" he asked as they got into the car. She nodded, but her face was pale. "It's just, we're meeting Mom today, aren't we?" "Yes, later. But don't worry, I'll be with you the whole time. And Maurice will be there too. He's an excellent lawyer and will ensure your rights are respected." Claire looked out the window, watching the city pass by. She's going to be furious with me. The tone of fear in her voice made Henry's stomach clench. Claire, look at me. He waited until she turned. You didn't do anything wrong. Do you understand that? You are a child, and the adults around you should be protecting you, not making you feel scared. Silent tears began to stream down her face. But what if they're right? What if I really am problematic? That's what Robert always says, that I'm difficult, that I cause trouble. Henry parked the car and turned fully to her. Claire, listen closely. You are not problematic. You are an incredible, intelligent and strong child, strong enough to seek help when you needed it. That's not causing trouble, that's having courage. And I'm very, very proud of you for that. The words seemed to hit her deeply. Claire looked away but nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Now, Henry continued, let's spend the rest of the morning doing something fun. What do you say? Before we face your mother, we deserve a moment of peace. Chapter 3. Confrontations and Revelations. Maurice Barnes's office occupied an entire floor of a commercial building in Chelsea, another upscale neighborhood in New York City. Henry arrived with Claire 15 minutes before the scheduled time, wanting to give the girl time to calm down and prepare for the meeting with her mother. During the morning, they had visited Central Park, walking through the gardens and visiting the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA. Claire showed a genuine interest in the works, asking intelligent questions that surprised Henry. It was evident that, despite the emotional neglect she had suffered, someone had invested in her education. You really like art, huh? He commented, as they observed a modern sculpture. Claire nodded shyly. My art teacher always says I have talent. I like to draw. Maybe we can set up a studio for you at home, Henry suggested, surprised by the naturalness with which the words came out. He was already thinking of Claire as a permanent part of his life. The smile she gave him warmed his heart, but now, sitting in the law office waiting room, Claire's face was tense again. Her fingers drummed nervously on her knee, and she bit her lower lip, a gesture Henry was beginning to recognize as a sign of anxiety. It's going to be okay, he assured, placing his hand over hers to calm her. She nodded, but didn't seem convinced. Maurice received them promptly, leading them to a spacious meeting room with a dark wooden table and comfortable chairs. He had prepared water, coffee, and juices, trying to create a less intimidating environment. Felicity confirmed she's coming, Maurice informed Henry, and she'll be accompanied by her lawyer, Dr. Paul Marshall. I know him well. He's competent but somewhat aggressive in negotiations. Henry nodded, lightly squeezing Claire's hand. We're prepared. Punctually at 2 o'clock, Maurice's secretary announced the arrival of Felicity Alvarez and her lawyer. When the door opened, Henry felt an odd discomfort seeing his ex-wife after so many years. Felicity was still beautiful, elegant at 40, impeccably dressed in a grey tailored suit and high heels. Her brown hair was shorter than he remembered, cut to shoulder length, and her face, though still attractive, showed signs of rigidity that weren't there before, as if the years had hardened not only her expression, but also her spirit. When her eyes fell on Claire, her face contorted in a mixture of irritation and something Henry couldn't identify. Guilt, perhaps? Or just inconvenience at having to deal with a situation she had created, and that was now escaping her control. Claire! Felicity's voice was cold, without any trace of the love that should exist between mother and daughter. Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you've caused? Robert and I were worried. Claire visibly shrank in the chair, and Henry felt a wave of anger rise within him. How could Felicity be so insensitive? Her first sentence to her daughter, after days without seeing her, was a reprimand. Good afternoon to you too, Felicity, Henry interjected, his sarcastic tone barely disguised. How nice that you managed to find time in your busy schedule to discuss our daughter's future. Felicity gave him a frosty look. Our daughter? Until 2 days ago you didn't even know she existed. Because of you, he retorted, keeping his voice low but firm. You deliberately hid my daughter from me for 12 years. That's a crime, you know. Felicity's lawyer, a middle-aged man with shrewd eyes, quickly intervened. Let's maintain civility, please. We are all here for the minor's well-being. Maurice nodded, taking on his role as mediator. Agreed. Let's focus on the facts and what's best for Claire. He opened a folder and took out some documents. To begin, I'd like to clarify that we are awaiting the results of the DNA test, which should be available in 48 hours. However, from what I've observed, there's no doubt regarding Mr. Miller's paternity. I never said he wasn't the father, Felicity shrugged, as if it were an irrelevant detail. But custody is mine, and Claire should return home immediately. For what? Henry asked, unable to contain himself. To continue being neglected? To dine alone while you and your husband go out to parties? To be ignored at school meetings? Felicity's face turned red with anger. You know nothing about how I raise my daughter. Don't come here giving me parenting lessons when you've never been present. Because you prevented me. Henry slammed his hand on the table, making Claire jump. He immediately regretted the gesture. Sorry, he said softly to the girl before turning back to Felicity. You knew I had the right to know my daughter, to be part of her life. But you chose to use Claire as a weapon against me, as revenge for me not giving in to your whims. Felicity laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. My whims? Is that how you see our marriage? As a series of my whims? Gentlemen, Maurice intervened again, we are not here to relive the past but to resolve the present situation. Claire ran away from home and sought out her father. This in itself is an indication that something is not right. Felicity's lawyer adjusted his tie, looking uncomfortable. Children run away from home for various reasons, often unjustified. Claire has always been a difficult girl, shall we say? It was Henry's turn to laugh incredulously. That's exactly what Claire told me, that you consider her difficult, problematic. Is that how you justify neglect? By blaming the victim? We are not here to discuss psychological theories, Mr. Miller, Dr. Marshall retorted. We are here to establish that legal custody of Claire belongs to her mother, and that Ms. Alvarez wishes for her daughter's immediate return to the family home. Claire, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke, her voice small but determined. I don't want to go back. All eyes turned to her. Felicity seemed genuinely surprised, as if she didn't expect her daughter to have a voice or an opinion. Claire, don't be ridiculous, Felicity said with an exasperated sigh. Your life is with us. Your school, your friends. What friends? Claire asked, with a bitterness that didn't match her age. You never let me bring anyone home, and when I asked to go to other people's houses, you always say you're too busy to take or pick me up. Henry felt his heart clench, seeing how his daughter had been isolated, not only at home but socially as well. That's not true. Felicity protested, but there was an uncertainty in her voice, as if she herself didn't believe what she was saying. You're exaggerating, as always. No, I'm not, Claire continued, gaining courage. You and Robert are never home, and when you are, you fight or ignore me. Robert once said I was a mistake, that you should have aborted me. And you didn't say anything, Mom, you didn't say anything. The silence that followed was deafening. Felicity's eyes widened, as if she hadn't expected Claire to share these intimate and painful details. That's out of context, she finally stammered, casting a nervous glance at her lawyer, who looked equally disconcerted. What context would justify saying something like that to a child? Henry asked, his voice low and dangerous. He felt a rising fury, but controlled himself for Claire. Or ignoring when someone says that to your daughter. Maurice, realizing the situation was rapidly deteriorating, intervened with professional calm. I think it's clear that we have a complex scenario here. Claire is expressing discomfort with her current situation, and that cannot be ignored. Legally, her opinion carries weight, especially considering her age. And what do you suggest? Felicity's lawyer asked, suddenly seeming less confident. I suggest that, while we await the DNA test results, Claire remains with Mr. Miller. It's evident that she feels safe with him, and forcing her to return to an environment that made her run away would be potentially harmful. That's absurd, Felicity protested, standing abruptly. He's practically a stranger to her. And whose fault is that? Henry retorted, remaining calm but firm. You deprived me of knowing my daughter for 12 years, Felicity. 12 years I'll never get back. And now you want to pretend you care about her well-being. I'm presenting a reasonable proposal, Maurice continued, unperturbed. Claire stays with Mr. Miller for now, with supervised visits from her mother. As soon as the DNA test results confirm paternity, we will begin the process to regularize the situation, probably with a request for joint custody. Joint custody? Felicity repeated incredulously. He's never been a father. He knows nothing about raising a child. And from what Claire tells us, you don't seem to be an expert on the subject either, Henry retorted, unable to contain the sarcasm. Claire watched the exchange of barbs with frightened eyes. Henry noticed and immediately softened his tone, placing his hand on hers again. It's okay, he assured her. We won't let anything bad happen to you. Felicity looked at the interaction between father and daughter with a strange, almost envious expression. For the first time since entering the room, she seemed to truly look at Claire, observing the fear and insecurity on her daughter's face. Something in her expression changed, softening briefly before hardening again. All right, she said finally to everyone's surprise. Claire can stay with you for now, but don't think this is permanent, Henry. When things calm down, we'll have a serious conversation about custody arrangements. Her lawyer seemed surprised by the concession but said nothing. Maurice, on the other hand, seemed satisfied. Excellent. I'll prepare a provisional document that both of you will sign, establishing the terms of this temporary agreement. Meanwhile, I suggest Ms. Alvarez and Claire have a moment alone to talk. Henry hesitated, worried about leaving Claire alone with Felicity, but the girl nodded bravely, indicating she was willing to speak with her mother. Reluctantly, he stood up and followed Maurice and Dr. Marshall out of the room, casting a last reassuring glance at Claire before leaving. In the corridor, as the lawyers moved away to discuss the terms of the agreement, Henry felt his cell phone vibrate. It was a message from Teresa, his secretary, informing him that Robert Avalar was at the Miller Development's office, demanding to speak with him and causing a scene at reception. Henry cursed under his breath, feeling the tension rise. What did that man want? Why was he interfering? The situation was complicated enough without Felicity's husband's meddling. Inside the room, Felicity and Claire faced each other in silence. It was Felicity who spoke first. I didn't know you felt that way, she said, in a softer tone than usual. That you felt neglected. Claire shrugged, not looking directly at her mother. You never asked how I felt. Felicity sighed, running a hand through her short hair. Things weren't easy, Claire. After I separated from Henry, I had to start from scratch. Build my career, my life. And I was a burden, Claire completed, with an understanding beyond her age. No, it's not that, Felicity protested, but without much conviction. It's just, I had a lot of responsibilities and you were so small. I thought I was doing my best. Lying to my father? Leaving me alone? Letting Robert treat me badly? Claire's voice trembled slightly, but she didn't cry. Felicity looked away, unable to face the direct accusation in her daughter's eyes. Robert isn't an easy person. I know that. But he gave me stability when I needed it most. And me? What did I need? The question hung in the air, heavy and painful. Felicity had no answer. For the first time, she seemed to truly see what she had done, how her selfish choices had deeply affected Claire. I'm sorry, she finally said, the words coming out with difficulty, as if she wasn't used to uttering them. I really am. Claire merely nodded, without showing whether she believed her mother's belated regret or not. After so many years of neglect, words didn't mean much. Do you like him? Felicity asked after another long silence. Henry, your father. Claire looked up, surprised by the question. Yes, she answered sincerely. He listens to me. And he seems to really care. Something akin to regret crossed Felicity's face. He was always like that. Intense in everything he does. When we started dating, he treated me as if I were the most important person in the world. But then came the company, the business, and I became secondary. But that doesn't justify hiding my existence from him, Claire retorted with an implacable logic. Felicity gave a sad smile. No, it doesn't. It was my selfishness. At the time I was hurt, feeling abandoned. I found out I was pregnant right after we decided to separate. Instead of telling him, I used it as a form of punishment, I guess. I thought it would only be for a while, that I would eventually tell the truth. But time passed and it became harder to admit the lie, Claire completed, understanding her mother's moral dilemma with surprising clarity. Felicity nodded, appearing genuinely remorseful. And then Robert came along and he made it clear he didn't want to deal with the ex in our lives. He has problems, Claire. Problems I ignored for too long. Chapter 4. Internal Storms. When Henry returned to the meeting room, he found Claire and Felicity sitting in silence. There was a palpable tension in the air, but also something different, a silent understanding that wasn't there before. Claire seemed calmer, though her eyes were slightly red as if she had held back tears. Felicity, for her part, kept her gaze down, her face an unreadable mask of contradictory emotions. "Is everything okay?" Henry asked, looking directly at Claire. The girl nodded. "Yes, Mom and I talked." Felicity stood up, adjusting her skirt with mechanical movements. "Are the documents ready to sign?" "Yes," confirmed Maurice, who entered the room right behind Henry. "Dr. Marshall is already reviewing them. But first, we need to discuss a small problem. It seems Mr. Avalar is causing a commotion at Mr. Miller's office." Felicity closed her eyes briefly, an expression of frustration crossing her face. "Robert, I expressly asked him not to interfere." "Well, it seems he's not very inclined to obey," Henry commented ironically. "My secretary just informed me that he's demanding to see me, shouting at reception and scaring the employees." Felicity's lawyer entered the room, looking embarrassed. "Miss Alvarez, your husband is on the phone. He said it's urgent." Felicity sighed deeply before taking the phone extended by the lawyer. She moved to a corner of the room, but everyone could clearly hear her part of the conversation. "Robert, what do you think you're doing?" "No, you're not going to solve anything that way. We're in the middle of a civilized negotiation here." "No, I won't allow you to—" "Robert, listen." She hung up, her face now pale with anger. "He's coming here." Henry exchanged a worried look with Maurice. Robert Avalar's erratic behavior could complicate the situation even further. "Claire," he said gently, "I think it's best if you wait in the next room with Dr. Maurice's assistant while we sort this out." "Okay." The girl nodded, clearly relieved not to have to face her stepfather. As soon as she left, accompanied by a young assistant, Henry turned to Felicity. "What kind of man is this you married, Felicity? First, I discover he treated my daughter like a burden, saying she should have been aborted. Now he invades my office and comes to cause trouble here. Is this the behavior of a balanced person?" Felicity seemed genuinely ashamed. "Robert has emotional control issues, but he's not violent if that's what you're thinking." "That's not what Claire says," Henry retorted. "She's afraid of him, Felicity. Afraid. A child shouldn't feel afraid in her own home." Before Felicity could respond, the room door burst open, and Robert Avalar stormed in, followed by a distraught secretary trying to restrain him. "Sorry, Dr. Maurice, he insisted, and—" "It's okay, Denise," Maurice calmed her. "You can leave." Robert Avalar was a man of medium height, but with an intimidating presence, well-cut grey hair, an expensive suit, and an expression of perpetual discontent. His small dark eyes immediately fixed on Henry. "So you're the famous father who appeared out of nowhere," he said, his tone laden with sarcasm. "Came to play the hero after 12 years. Henry remained calm, though inside he was furious. "Mr. Avalar, I presume. This is a private meeting. Your presence was neither requested nor is it welcome." "Robert, please," Felicity intervened, her voice tense. "We've talked about this. Let's resolve it civilly." "Civilized?" Robert laughed, a harsh, unpleasant sound. "There's nothing civilized about a man who kidnaps another's daughter." "Kidnaps?" Henry repeated, incredulous. "She's my biological daughter, whom you hid from me for 12 years, and who ran away from home because she was mistreated. Don't distort the facts." "Facts?" Robert took a step forward threateningly. "The fact is that Claire is a manipulative girl who made up this whole story to get attention. She's always been like that since she was little. A compulsive liar." Henry felt his blood boil. The way that man spoke of Claire, a child, was despicable. "The only liar here is you. Claire told me exactly how you treated her, the horrible things you said to her. And you believed it. Pathetic." Robert turned to Felicity. "Let's go. We don't have to stay here listening to these accusations. The girl is coming home with us right now, and this farce is over." "No." Felicity's voice was surprisingly firm. "I've already signed the papers, Robert. Claire will stay with Henry for now." Robert's face contorted in fury. "What? You can't do that without consulting me." "Yes, I can. I'm her mother, her legal guardian. This is my decision." Felicity's unexpected determination seemed to leave Robert momentarily speechless. He looked from Felicity to Henry, and then to the lawyers as if seeking an ally. Finding none, his face settled into a mask of controlled coldness "This won't end here," he said finally, his voice dangerously low. "I'm not finished with you, Miller, nor with the girl." The veiled threat made Henry take a step forward, ready to physically confront the man if necessary. But Maurice intervened quickly, stepping between the two. "Mr. Avila, I strongly advise you to leave before your words are interpreted as threats, which could have serious legal consequences." Robert adjusted his suit, regaining his composure. "We'll see who has the last laugh." And with that he left the room, slamming the door behind him. A heavy silence fell over the room. Felicity looked exhausted, as if the confrontation had drained her last reserves of energy. "I'm sorry about that," she said finally, her voice weak. "He's not always like this." "It doesn't matter how he isn't always," Henry retorted, still trembling with contained anger. "What matters is how he treats my daughter when he's home with her. And from what we saw today, it's exactly as Claire described." Felicity did not dispute it. There seemed to be a reluctant acceptance in her silence, as if she was finally seeing the situation clearly for the first time. "The documents are ready to sign," Maurice announced, trying to redirect the meeting to its original purpose. "As agreed, Claire will remain under Mr. Miller's temporary custody until we resolve the definitive situation, with supervised visits from her mother." Everyone signed the documents in silence. When they finished, Felicity approached Henry, speaking softly so only he could hear. "Take good care of her. She deserves more than I could give." It was the closest to an admission of failure Henry had ever heard from Felicity. He nodded gravely without responding. The words sounded sincere, but they came too late to erase years of neglect. When Claire was called back into the room, her eyes immediately sought Henry's, a silent question in them. "Everything is resolved," he assured her. "You'll stay with me for now." The relief on her face was visible, but there was also an undeniable sadness when she looked at her mother. As hurt as she was, Claire still loved Felicity. It was complicated and painful, like all broken family relationships. "Can I call you?" Felicity asked Claire in a rare moment of vulnerability. "To see how you are." Claire nodded, saying nothing. There was a long way to go before trust could be rebuilt between them. As they left the office, Maurice pulled Henry aside. "Keep an eye on that Robert," he advised in a low voice. "I didn't like his demeanor. Men with that kind of temper can be unpredictable." "I'm aware," Henry replied, serious. "I've already taken steps to reinforce security at my apartment, and I'm hiring a driver to take Claire to school." Maurice nodded, approving the precaution. "The DNA results should be out tomorrow. As soon as we have confirmation, we can file the formal request for joint custody. Or, depending on what we decide, sole custody." "Let's take it one step at a time," Henry said, looking at Claire, who was waiting near the elevator. "For now, I just want to make sure she's safe and comfortable." On the way back home, Claire was unusually quiet, looking out the car window with a thoughtful expression. "Do you want to talk about what happened?" Henry asked gently. She shrugged, a gesture he was beginning to understand as her way of processing difficult emotions. "Was Robert angry?" "Yes," Henry replied honestly. He saw no point in hiding the truth from her. "But that doesn't matter. He can't do anything against you or me." "He doesn't like to lose," Claire commented, still looking out the window. "He gets very angry when he loses, even at small things like board games." Henry felt a chill imagining how that volatile temper must have manifested in the home where Claire lived. "Well, this time he's going to have to accept it. Your mother agreed for you to stay with me, and we have the legal documents to ensure that." Claire turned to him, her green eyes piercing. "Do you think she cares, really?" The question caught Henry off guard. It would be easy to demonize Felicity completely, but the truth was more complex. "I think so in her own way, but sometimes people get lost in their own problems and can't give others what they need." Claire nodded, seeming to process the answer. "When it was just the two of us before Robert, sometimes it was good. She would take me to the park, read stories to me." Henry felt a pang of jealousy imagining those moments he was deprived of, but he pushed the petty feeling aside. The important thing was that Claire had some positive memories of her mother. "People change," he said carefully. "Sometimes for the worse, but they can also change for the better. Maybe your mother will realize what she lost and decide to be better. Do you think?" The hope in Claire's voice was painful to hear. "It's possible," he replied, not wanting to give false hope. but also not wanting to completely crush the girl's faith. "But no matter what happens with her, I want you to know that I'm here for you now. And I'm not going anywhere." The small smile Claire gave him was like a ray of sunshine breaking through dark clouds. Back at the apartment, Henry realized he needed to make some urgent changes. The place was elegant and sophisticated, but entirely unsuitable for a child. It was a bachelor's apartment, designed to impress clients and business partners, not to raise a daughter. While Claire watched TV in the living room, he made a few calls. First to his assistant, Teresa, asking her to find a child interior designer with immediate availability. Then to the security department of Miller Developments, requesting reinforced building security and the hiring of a reliable driver. Finally, he called a renowned private school in the neighborhood, scheduling a visit for the next day. He was in the middle of a conversation with the school principal when he noticed Claire standing at his office door, observing him with a curious expression. "Is something wrong?" he asked after hanging up. "Are you going to enroll me in another school?" Henry hesitated. "I thought about it. It would be more convenient since you'll be living here. But if you prefer to continue at your current school, we can arrange that too." Claire seemed to ponder the question seriously. "Can I see the new school first? I have some friends at the other one, but it would be strange to stay there and live here." "Of course. We'll schedule a visit for tomorrow." He paused, trying to read her expression. "How are you feeling about all this?" Claire sat in the chair opposite his desk, lightly swinging her feet that barely touched the floor. "It's strange. Good, but strange. Like I'm dreaming." "I understand," Henry said, though he could barely imagine the emotional turmoil she must be experiencing. "It's surreal for me too. 2 days ago I didn't know I had a daughter, and now I can't imagine my life without you." The words came out naturally, and Henry was surprised by the truth in them. In just 2 days, Claire had become the center of his world. "Really?" she asked, the insecurity evident in her voice. "Really," he confirmed firmly. "And I promise that from now on I will do everything in my power to be the best father possible for you." Claire smiled, a shy but genuine smile that lit up her entire face. In that moment, Henry knew there was nothing in the world he wouldn't do to protect that smile. Later that night, after an improvised dinner, Henry realized he needed to learn to cook more nutritious things than instant noodles. They were watching a movie when the doorbell rang. Henry stood up, cautious. He wasn't expecting anyone, and after the confrontation with Robert earlier, he was on alert. "Wait here," he told Claire, who nodded, looking equally apprehensive. He looked through the peephole and relaxed when he saw the familiar figure of Teresa, his secretary, carrying several bags. He opened the door surprised. "Teresa? What are you doing here at this hour?" The middle-aged woman, who had worked with him for almost a decade, smiled. "Sorry for the unannounced visit, sir, but I thought the girl might need some things." She held up the bags. "Clothes, toiletries, school supplies, some books and games. I hope I'm not intruding." Henry felt a wave of gratitude. Teresa had always been efficient and dedicated, but this gesture went beyond her professional duties. "No, not at all. It's very kind of you, Teresa. Please come in." Claire appeared shyly at the living room door, curious to see who had arrived. "Claire, this is Teresa, my secretary." "Teresa, this is my daughter, Claire." Teresa's face lit up with a warm smile. "Hello, dear. It's a pleasure to meet you. I brought some things I thought you might like." To Henry's surprise, Claire approached without hesitation, returning Teresa's smile with one of her own. There was something in the older woman's maternal presence that seemed to comfort the girl. "Thank you," Claire said, looking curiously at the bags. "Can I see?" "Of course. Let's unpack everything in the living room," Teresa suggested, already heading there as if perfectly at ease. Henry followed them, observing how Teresa gently presented each item to Claire: carefully chosen clothes, age-appropriate books, a small painting kit after learning from Henry that the girl liked art, even a teddy bear that, according to Teresa, every girl should have, no matter her age. Claire seemed enchanted, especially with the books and art supplies. While she examined the items, Teresa approached Henry. "I hired a decorator as you requested. She can come tomorrow afternoon to discuss transforming the guest room," she informed in a low voice. "And I also provided a list of recommended pediatricians, child psychologists if necessary, and some options for age-appropriate extracurricular activities." Henry nodded. impressed as always with Teresa's efficiency. "I don't know how to thank you, Teresa. You went above and beyond." The woman smiled, her maternal gaze now extending to him as well. "You've always taken care of all of us at the company, Mr. Miller. It's time someone took care of you a little. And this beautiful girl, who I must say is your spitting image." Henry chuckled softly. "Everyone says that, because it's true. The same eyes, the same stubborn chin." Teresa looked at Claire, who was absorbed in exploring the painting kit. "She seems like a good girl. Strong, after everything she's been through." "Yes, she's incredible," Henry agreed, feeling that wave of pride and protection again. "I just hope I'm up to the challenge. I don't know anything about being a father." "Nobody does at first," Teresa consoled, with the wisdom of someone who had raised 3 children. "But you'll learn, and you're not alone. You can count on me for anything." Chapter 5. Rebuilding Bridges. The news arrived the next morning as Henry prepared an improvised breakfast for Claire. The DNA test confirmed what both already knew. The probability of paternity was over 99.99%. Henry was, without a shadow of a doubt, Claire's biological father. Although the result was expected, feeling the official confirmation brought an overwhelming emotion to Henry. He looked at Claire, who was eating cereal at the kitchen table, still wearing new pajamas bought by Teresa, and felt a love so intense he could barely breathe. This girl truly was his daughter, his blood, part of him. "Good news," he said, showing the email with the result that Maurice had just sent. "Officially, I'm your father." Claire looked up from her cereal bowl, a small smile forming at the corners of her mouth. As if there was any doubt. "Everyone says we're identical." The casual observation, so laden with natural acceptance of the bond between them, touched Henry deeply. He approached and, in a spontaneous gesture, kissed the top of her head. "I'm going to call Maurice and ask him to start the formal process for joint custody," he informed, returning to prepare his coffee. "And then we'll visit that school I mentioned." Claire nodded, returning to her cereal. There was something in her posture, a subtle tension that Henry was beginning to recognize as a sign of concern. "Is something bothering you?" Claire shrugged, that characteristic gesture. "It's just, what if Mom changes her mind? What if she doesn't want joint custody anymore?" Henry sat at the table, looking at his daughter seriously. "Claire, I want you to understand one thing. Now that I know you exist, there's no force in the world that can keep me away from you. If your mother tries to backtrack, we will fight with every legal weapon we have. What if she wins? What if the judge decides I have to go back there?" The vulnerability in her voice broke Henry's heart. "That won't happen. We have proof of neglect. We have your testimony, and now we have confirmation that I'm your father. Besides, remember that your mother voluntarily agreed to this current arrangement. That weighs in our favor." Claire didn't seem entirely convinced, but she nodded, returning to eat. Henry made a mental note to talk to Maurice about the real chances of losing an eventual legal dispute. He needed to be prepared for all possibilities. After breakfast, while Claire was getting ready, Henry called Maurice, who was already aware of the DNA result. "That's great news. Henry, I'm already preparing the petition for joint custody. With the DNA result and the agreement Felicity signed yesterday, we're in a good position. Claire is worried that her mother might change her mind. How real is that possibility?" Maurice hesitated before responding. "Honestly, it's a valid concern. Felicity might claim she was under emotional pressure when she signed the temporary agreement, and legally she still has sole custody of Claire. What if we file for sole custody for me instead of joint?" Henry asked, his voice low so Claire wouldn't hear from the other room. "It would be a tough battle," Maurice warned. "Family courts tend to favor agreements that keep both parents in the child's life, unless there's compelling evidence of severe abuse or neglect. You saw how Robert behaved yesterday, and you heard what Claire said about how he treated her. Yes, and that gives us ammunition, no doubt, but it's her word against theirs at the moment. We'd need more proof, perhaps testimony from the school, or a professional who has seen Claire." Henry sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "I understand. For now, we'll proceed with the joint custody request then. But I want to be prepared if we need to change strategy." After hanging up, he found Claire waiting patiently in the living room, dressed in new clothes that Teresa had brought, jeans, a simple but pretty blue shirt and comfortable sneakers. Her brown hair was combed, but still had that slightly disheveled look that seemed to be part of her personality. "Ready to see the new school?" She nodded, though she seemed nervous. "Will I fit in there? It's a rich people's school, isn't it?" The question caught Henry by surprise. "It's a good school, with great teachers and infrastructure. But the most important thing is that it's a place where you feel good and can learn. If you don't like it, we can look for other options." "But you're rich," Claire insisted, as if trying to understand something. "Have you always lived like this?" Henry smiled, better understanding her unease. "No, not at all. I grew up in a simple neighborhood in Albany, upstate New York. My father was a mechanic and my mother a seamstress. I studied in public schools until I got a scholarship for college. Miller Development started as a small architectural firm and grew little by little." Claire looked at him with evident surprise. "I never imagined. Mom always talked as if you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth." "Your mother met me when the company was already starting to succeed," Henry explained, leading Claire to the elevator. "I think she preferred the narrative of the successful businessman over the boy who started from scratch." In the car, on the way to school, Claire remained thoughtful. "Do you still have contact with your parents, my grandparents?" The question made Henry feel a pang of sadness. "Unfortunately not. My father passed away when I was 20, even before I started college. My mother passed 5 years ago. I'm sorry," Claire said sincerely. "Thank you. They would have loved to meet you." Henry smiled, thinking of how delighted his mother would be with her granddaughter. "Maybe one day we can visit Albany. I still have some aunts and cousins there. Your extended family." The idea of a larger family seemed to please Claire, who smiled shyly. The school, as expected, was impressive. Located on a large wooded estate in Greenwich Village, Horizon Academy was known for its innovative pedagogical approach and academic excellence. The principal, Dr. Cecilia Stone, an elegant middle-aged woman with an intellectual air, received them personally for the visit. "Mr. Miller, it's a pleasure to meet you." "And you must be Claire," she said, smiling warmly at the girl. "Welcome to Horizon Academy." As they toured the school facilities, Henry carefully observed Claire's reactions. She initially seemed intimidated by the sophisticated environment, but gradually relaxed, especially when they visited the art studio, equipped with high-quality materials and ample space for creation. "Do you like art, Claire?" Dr. Cecilia asked, noticing the girl's evident interest. "Yes," Claire replied, gently running her fingers over a blank canvas. "I like to draw and paint." "We have a very strong art program here," the principal commented. "Our teacher, Louisa Green, is a recognized artist. I'm sure you two would get along well." When the visit ended, they returned to the principal's office to discuss the practical details of the transfer. Dr. Cecilia was direct. "Normally, our admission process is quite rigorous, involving tests and interviews. But given the exceptional circumstances and Claire's impressive academic record at her previous school, I'm willing to be flexible with the procedure." Henry nodded, grateful. "I appreciate your understanding. Claire's family situation has undergone significant changes recently, and I believe a stable school environment would be beneficial for her now." The principal looked at Claire, who was attentively watching the conversation. "Claire, what did you think of our school?" The girl thought for a moment before answering. "It's beautiful and big. I really like the art studio and the library." "And would you like to study here?" the principal asked directly. Claire looked at Henry as if seeking his approval before answering. "Yes, I'd like to try." The cautious but positive response made the principal smile. "Excellent. We can prepare her to start next week, if that's all right with you. That will give us time to organize the uniform and necessary materials." While they discussed the final details, Henry's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Teresa, informing him that Felicity had appeared at the Miller Development's office alone, asking to speak with him. According to Teresa, she seemed distraught, but insisted the matter was urgent and personal. Henry frowned, worried about what might have prompted this unexpected visit. "Dr. Stone, can we finalize the details by email? An urgent commitment has come up that I need to attend to." The principal nodded, understanding. "Certainly. I'll send all the necessary forms today." In the car, Claire noticed the tension on Henry's face. Did something happen? He hesitated, unsure how much he should share. On one hand, he wanted to protect Claire from more stress. On the other, he felt that being honest with her was important for building trust. "Your mother is at my office wanting to speak with me," he finally replied. Claire's face paled. "Did she come to get me? I don't know what she wants, but don't worry. The agreement we signed yesterday is still valid. You're not going anywhere against your will." Claire bit her lip, nervous. "Can I go with you?" "To talk to her?" The question surprised Henry. "Are you sure? I don't know how this conversation will go." "I am," Claire replied with unexpected determination. "I'm tired of adults deciding my life without listening to me." Henry felt a wave of pride for his daughter's courage. "All right then. But if at any point you want to leave the room, just let me know." At Miller Developments, Teresa greeted them with a worried expression. "She's waiting in your office, sir. She seems quite shaken." "Thank you, Teresa. Can you get something for Claire to drink while we talk? Juice, perhaps?" "No," Claire interrupted. "I want to go too." Teresa looked at Henry, who nodded. "All right. Claire will come with me." When they entered the room, they found Felicity sitting in one of the armchairs, her gaze distant. She seemed to have aged years since the previous day. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her usual air of confidence had disappeared. Upon seeing Claire, her expression softened briefly, before becoming anxious. "Claire, I didn't know you would come too." "I wanted to come," the girl replied, her voice firm despite the evident tension. Henry indicated the armchair for Claire and sat at his desk. "What happened, Felicity? Why the unexpected visit?" Felicity took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "Things happened. After yesterday's meeting, Robert lost control. I've never seen him so furious." She hesitated, looking at Claire. "Perhaps we shouldn't talk about this in front of her." "I'm tired of adults talking about me as if I'm not present," Claire said, surprising both Henry and Felicity. "Whatever happened, I want to hear it." Felicity seemed momentarily speechless at her daughter's assertiveness. "You're right," she finally admitted. "I deserve this." She took another deep breath. "Robert and I had a terrible fight last night. He said horrible things. About you, Claire. About how I would regret allowing you to stay with your father. I was afraid of what he might do." Henry felt a shiver run down his spine. "He threatened you, or Claire?" Felicity looked away. "Not directly. Robert is more subtle than that. But I know that look, that tone. He was furious that I had agreed to temporary custody. He said I had betrayed him." "And what happened after that?" Claire asked, her voice small but firm. "He left the house, slamming the door. Came back in the early hours, drunk." Felicity ran a hand over her face, looking exhausted. "And this morning, I found out he transferred all the money from our joint accounts to a personal account of his. I'm practically left with nothing." Henry observed Felicity intently, trying to gauge whether that story was true or just another manipulation of hers. "Why did you come to tell me this?" "Because I'm afraid of what he might do," Felicity replied, looking directly at Claire. Afraid for her. "Robert has always been controlling, jealous. But I've never seen him so out of control as yesterday." "And what do you expect me to do?" Henry asked, still cautious. "I'm thinking of separating from him," Felicity said, her voice low. "I should have done it a long time ago. But now, I'm scared. He knows everything about my life, controls our finances, has powerful contacts." Henry exchanged a look with Claire, who watched her mother with an expression difficult to read. "Are you asking for my help?" he asked, incredulous. "After everything you've done?" Felicity swallowed hard, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I know I don't deserve it. I know I was selfish and cruel, hiding Claire from you, hurting her with my neglect." She looked at her daughter. "I have no excuses for how I treated you, Claire. Or rather, I have excuses, but none of them are good enough. I was a horrible mother." The direct and sincere acknowledgement of her flaws surprised both Henry and Claire. There was a genuine vulnerability in Felicity that neither of them had ever seen before. "And now?" Claire asked, her voice trembling. "What do you want?" "I want to do the right thing for the first time," Felicity replied. "I'm not asking you to come home, Claire, not now. I know you're better off with your father. But I want to try to fix things if you give me a chance." Henry watched the interaction between mother and daughter carefully. There was a long way to go before trust could be rebuilt, but at least Felicity seemed to be taking the first genuine step in that direction. "As for Robert," Felicity continued, turning to Henry, "I want to protect myself from him and protect Claire. If he's willing to hurt me financially because I agreed to temporary custody, I fear what else he might do. Are you thinking of a restraining order? Henry asked. Felicity nodded. Among other things. But for that I need a lawyer, and at the moment, she left the sentence hanging, pride evident on her face as she admitted her precarious financial situation. Henry sighed deeply. Helping Felicity after everything she had done went against all his initial instincts. But looking at Claire, he realized the girl needed to see that the adults in her life could overcome their differences for her sake. I can talk to Maurice, he finally said. He can recommend a good family lawyer for you. And as for the costs, we can sort that out too. Chapter 6. Threats and Protection. The following weeks brought significant changes for Henry and Claire. The guest room had been completely transformed into a cozy and personalized space for the girl. Walls in a soft turquoise blue, her favorite color. A comfortable bed with a star-patterned quilt. A spacious desk for studies. And the item that most enchanted Claire, a small art space with an easel, paints, brushes, and all the materials a young artist could desire. It's perfect, Claire had said, marveling when she saw the finished room. I've never had a space just for me like this. The simple yet revealing statement made Henry feel simultaneously grateful for being able to provide this for her, and angry at the emotional deprivations she had suffered until then. The new routine was gradually settling in. Claire had started attending Horizon Academy, where, after a somewhat difficult initial adjustment, she was beginning to make friends and excel in art and literature classes. Henry had completely reorganized his work schedule, delegating more responsibilities and reducing travel to be present in his daughter's daily life. Every morning, they had breakfast together before the driver, Serge, took Claire to school. Henry made a point of preparing breakfast. He was learning to cook with the help of Mrs. Hilda and many online tutorial videos. In the afternoons, when Claire returned from school, he tried to be home at least 3 days a week. On the other two, Teresa picked the girl up and stayed with her until Henry arrived. On weekends, they explored the city together. They visited museums, parks, cinemas. Henry discovered with surprise and joy that he appreciated these simple moments more than any successful business deal in his career. Seeing Claire's face light up before a work of art at the Metropolitan Museum of Art met, or while eating cotton candy in Central Park, was worth more than all the buildings he had constructed. As for Felicity, things had taken an unexpected turn. With Maurice's help, she had secured a good lawyer and filed for divorce and a restraining order against Robert. The process was ongoing, but Robert was not making things easy. He used his influence and contacts to delay procedures and complicate Felicity's life in every possible way. Without access to joint accounts and facing difficulties finding employment due to Robert's interference with her professional contacts, Felicity was in a precarious financial situation. Henry, against all his initial instincts, had offered help, renting a small apartment for her and ensuring she had the basics to live with dignity while she reorganized herself. Claire visited her mother once a week, usually on Saturdays, always accompanied by Henry, who waited in the car or at a nearby cafe. The first visits had been tense and uncomfortable, but gradually a new dynamic began to form between mother and daughter. Felicity, away from Robert's toxic influence and facing her own flaws, seemed genuinely committed to rebuilding her relationship with Claire. "How was it with your mother today?" Henry asked, as they returned from one of these visits on a rainy Saturday in June. Claire looked out the car window, watching the raindrops stream down the glass. "It was good. She's different." "Different how?" "Memorput." "Present, I think. Before she was always busy or distracted with her phone. Today we made fudge together, and she showed me pictures of when I was a baby." Claire paused as if processing something. "There were pictures of you too. Of you two together before I was born." Henry nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. It was difficult to reconcile the woman he had fallen in love with years ago with the one who had hidden his daughter from him for so long. "We were happy in the beginning. Your mother and I, things got complicated later. She said you met at an architecture exhibition," Claire commented, curious. "Is that true?" "Yes, at New York Design Week. She was a journalist covering the event for a magazine. I had just won an award for a sustainable project." Henry smiled at the memory. She interviewed me and we ended up talking for hours. A week later we were dating. Was it love at first sight? The question had that romantic innocence typical of pre-teens. Henry chuckled softly. Something like that. Your mother was brilliant, ambitious, full of life. We fell in love quickly and got married in less than a year. And what went wrong? The direct question caught Henry by surprise, but he decided to be honest. Claire deserved it. Many things. I was building the company, working too much. Your mother wanted to travel, have experiences, not settle down. We had different visions for the future. And we didn't know how to talk about it properly, find compromises. Claire nodded, seeming to ponder deeply. She told me she's sorry for what she did. For hiding my existence from you. And do you believe her? The girl shrugged, that characteristic gesture. I think so. She seems genuinely regretful. And sad. Claire looked at Henry. She cried when I was leaving. She said she realized too late how much she lost by being an absent mother. Henry felt an unexpected compassion for Felicity. Life had strange ways of teaching painful lessons. People can change, Claire, especially when they realize their mistakes. Maybe your mother is finally understanding what truly matters. When they arrived at the apartment, they found Teresa waiting at the door, her face tense. What happened? Henry asked immediately, recognizing the secretary's worried expression. Robert Avalar was here, Teresa replied, lowering her voice so Claire wouldn't hear. But the girl was attentive and approached, clearly tense. Did he get into the building? Henry asked, alarmed. No, security stopped him following your instructions. But he was furious, shouting in the lobby that you would regret getting involved in his life, that this wouldn't end like this. Henry felt a wave of anger and concern. That man was becoming an increasingly big problem. Did he ask for me? Claire inquired, her voice small. Teresa hesitated, looking at Henry as if asking for guidance on what to say. He nodded slightly. Claire deserved to know the truth, however unsettling it might be. Yes, dear, Teresa replied gently. He said you should be at his house, not here. That your father was filling your head with lies. Claire visibly paled, and Henry put a protective arm around her shoulders. Don't worry. He can't get in here and he can't take you anywhere. But as soon as they entered the apartment, Henry called Morris. The situation was escalating, and he needed to ensure that all legal steps were taken to protect Claire. I need a restraining order against Robert Avalar, he said, as soon as the lawyer answered. He was at my building today making threats. I understand your concern, Maurice replied, his tone professional. But to get a restraining order, we need evidence of direct threat or behavior indicating imminent danger. He threatened me and was at my building trying to see my daughter, even knowing he has no permission to do so. Is that not enough? Legally, it's complicated. He could claim he just wanted to talk. We'd need something more concrete. Maurice paused. Is Felicity's divorce progressing? The restraining order she obtained might help us get one for Claire, too. It's facing obstacles. Robert is using all resources to delay the process. Henry ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Maurice, I can't wait until something serious happens. Claire is scared, and rightly so. I'll see what I can do, the lawyer promised. Meanwhile, keep security reinforced and document any contact or attempted contact from Robert. Each incident strengthens our case. After hanging up, Henry found Claire sitting on the living room sofa, hugging a pillow, clearly distraught. He's not going to give up, is he? She asked, looking at Henry with frightened eyes. Robert always gets what he wants, always. Henry sat beside her, trying to convey a confidence he didn't fully feel. This time it's different, Claire. He's facing not just me, but the entire legal system. And I won't let him get near you. Claire nodded, but didn't seem entirely convinced. What if he does something to Mum? She's alone in that apartment. The genuine concern for her mother's well-being, despite all she had suffered, showed the generosity of Claire's heart. Henry felt a wave of pride for his daughter. Your mother has a restraining order against him, and the building where she is has security. But I'll call her and check if everything's okay, all right? While Claire went to take a bath to calm down, Henry called Felicity, explaining what had happened. He was here too, she revealed, her voice trembling. Last night. He managed to get past the doorman, saying he had forgotten something when we still lived together. The doorman is new and didn't know about the restraining order. Henry felt his stomach sink. Did he hurt you? Not physically, but the threats. He said he's going to destroy me, Henry, that I'll regret every decision I've made. And he mentioned Claire too, said you two can't hide her from him forever. The anger Henry felt was almost paralyzing. Did you call the police? Yes, but by the time they arrived, he had already left. I filed a police report for violating the restraining order, but his lawyer is already working to minimize the incident. Henry took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. Felicity, I think you should consider leaving New York City for a while. Go to a relative's house, perhaps. I have nowhere to go, she admitted, her voice weak. Robert isolated me from everyone over the years. My parents died, and my sister has lived in Europe for a decade. I'm alone in this. The vulnerability in her voice was so different from the confident and manipulative Felicity Henry had known that it was difficult to reconcile the two versions of the same person. I'll think of something, he promised. Meanwhile, be extra careful. If you feel you're in immediate danger, don't hesitate to call the police again. After hanging up, Henry remained seated, absorbing the gravity of the situation. Robert Avila was becoming an increasingly real threat. His obsession with maintaining control over Felicity, and by extension over Claire, was becoming dangerous. That night, after checking 3 times that all doors and windows were locked, Henry had difficulty sleeping. His mind was filled with worries. How could he effectively protect Claire? The legal system seemed slow and insufficient in the face of the immediate threat Robert posed. In the morning, he was woken by a call from Teresa. Her voice was tense, almost broken. Sir, there was an incident at the office. Someone broke several windows during the night and left a threatening message. The police are already here. Henry sat up abruptly in bed. Are you okay? Is anyone hurt? We're all fine. The incident occurred after everyone had left. But the message, it's about Claire, sir. The police want to speak with you as soon as possible. Henry's heart raced. I'm on my way. Don't touch anything and keep the police informed that I'll be there in 20 minutes. Quickly he dressed and went to check on Claire, who was still sleeping peacefully. Reluctant to leave her alone after the previous day's threats, he called Mrs. Hilda, asking her to come stay with the girl while he dealt with the emergency at the office. Don't leave the apartment for any reason, he instructed the housekeeper when she arrived. Keep all doors locked and don't open for anyone except for me when I return. Mrs. Hilda, an experienced and sensible woman, nodded gravely. You can count on me, sir. I'll take care of her as if she were my own granddaughter. On the way to the office, Henry called Morris, reporting the new incident. This should be enough for a restraining order now, shouldn't it? Without a doubt, if we can prove it was Robert, the lawyer replied. I'm heading to the office too. Don't speak to the police without me. When he arrived, the scene was disturbing. Several ground-floor windows were broken, and inside the main lobby, in red paint on the white wall, a threatening message. The girl comes home, or all of you will suffer. Henry felt his blood run cold. The message left no doubt about who the target was or who the perpetrator was. Robert had escalated from verbal threats to vandalism and direct intimidation. The police officers investigating the scene took photos and collected statements from the night security guards, who reported hearing the sound of windows breaking around 3 in the morning. But by the time they arrived at the scene, the perpetrator had already fled. We have security camera footage, the detective informed Henry, a hooded man, but we believe he can be identified by his height and gait. Do you have any suspicion of who it might be? Yes, Henry replied firmly. Robert Avila. He has been making threats against me and my daughter in recent days. The detective noted the name. We will investigate. Meanwhile, I recommend reinforcing security both here and at your residence. Maurice, who had arrived during the conversation, added, We will be filing a request for a restraining order immediately. This incident, combined with previous verbal threats, constitutes a clear pattern of intimidation. While the police continued their work, Henry stepped aside to call Felicity again. She needed to know what was happening and take additional precautions, but when he tried her cell phone, it went straight to voicemail. He tried again with the same result. An uncomfortable feeling began to form in his stomach. Teresa, he called, worried. Did you speak with Felicity today? The secretary shook her head. No, sir. Should I have? No, just... She's not answering her phone. Teresa frowned, sharing his concern. Do you want me to try to locate her? I can call some people, check if anyone has seen her. Please, Henry asked, the discomfort growing. And I'll stop by her apartment on my way home, just to make sure everything's okay. As he drove to the small apartment he had rented for Felicity, Henry couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Robert had shown he was willing to go far in his intimidation. What else would he be capable of doing? Chapter 7. The Value of True Love. The small building where Felicity lived was in a quiet neighborhood on the west side of New York City. Nothing luxurious like the places she had lived before, but safe and well-maintained. When Henry parked in front, he immediately noticed something was wrong. The window of Felicity's apartment on the second floor was wide open, the curtains swaying in the wind. With his heart racing, he greeted the doorman, an elderly gentleman who already knew him from previous visits. "Mr. Anthony, is Miss Felicity home?" The doorman frowned thoughtfully. "Haven't seen her leave today. But her husband was here last night, very late. Seemed upset." Her husband? Henry felt a shiver run down his spine. "Mr. Robert? He shouldn't have been allowed in. There's a restraining order against him." The doorman seemed genuinely surprised. "Restraining order? Nobody told me about that, Mr. Miller. He said he was coming to pick up some personal things, that everything was fine." Henry cursed under his breath. The building management should have informed all staff about the restraining order, but apparently the information hadn't reached the night doorman. "I'm going up to check on her," he said, already heading for the stairs. "Do you want me to go with you, sir?" the doorman offered, looking concerned now. "No, stay here in case the police arrive. I've already called them." In truth, Henry hadn't called the police yet, but intended to do so as soon as he checked the apartment. He climbed the stairs 2 steps at a time, his anxiety growing with each step. Upon reaching Felicity's apartment door, he found it ajar. This only increased his concern. "Felicity," he called, pushing the door open slowly. "It's me, Henry. Is everything okay?" There was no answer. The small apartment was in complete silence, except for the sound of the wind entering through the open window. Henry entered cautiously, all his senses on alert. The living room was in disarray, with objects scattered on the floor as if there had been a struggle. A broken vase, books knocked off the shelf, a chair overturned. Henry's heart pounded as he moved through the apartment, calling for Felicity. In the bedroom, the scene was even worse. Clothes strewn on the floor, drawers pulled out and overturned, the mattress partially off the bed. It was obvious that someone had been searching for something there, rummaging through everything violently, but there was no sign of Felicity. Henry returned to the living room, trying to understand what might have happened. That's when he noticed a crumpled piece of paper under the coffee table. He bent down to pick it up and saw it was a handwritten note in shaky handwriting. "If you're reading this, he found me. Don't trust him. Protect Claire. The cabin, Montauk." It was Felicity's handwriting, no doubt. Henry felt his blood run cold. The cabin in Montauk, a small beach house they had bought together during their marriage, a refuge they used on weekends. In the property division, the cabin had gone to Felicity, but as far as he knew, she never used it. As he examined the note, he noticed another disturbing detail: small drops of blood in the corner of the paper. Were they Felicity's? The thought made his stomach churn. The situation was even more serious than he had initially imagined. Without wasting time, Henry grabbed his cell phone and called the police, reporting Felicity's disappearance and the suspicious circumstances. Then he called Maurice. "Robert took Felicity," he said as soon as the lawyer answered. "The apartment is ransacked, and she left a note mentioning the cabin in Montauk. There's blood on the paper, Maurice." "My God," Maurice's voice was tense. "Did you call the police?" "I just called. I'm going home now to check on Claire, and then I'm heading to Montauk." "Henry, wait for the police. Don't get directly involved. It's dangerous, and I can't wait, Maurice. If Robert really took Felicity to the cabin, every minute counts. The police will take time to mobilize a team and get there. It's almost a 2-hour drive." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "At least don't go alone, and keep your cell phone on. I'll try to speed things up here with my police contacts." Henry agreed and hung up, already leaving the apartment. On the way home, he called Mrs. Hilda, checking if everything was okay with Claire. The housekeeper reassured him, saying the girl was fine, studying in her room. Upon arriving home, he found Claire in the kitchen, making a sandwich with Mrs. Hilda's help. The domestic and peaceful scene contrasted drastically with the turmoil in his mind. "Dad?" Claire smiled when she saw him, but her smile quickly disappeared as she noticed his tense expression. "What happened?" Henry hesitated. How much should he tell her? He didn't want to scare her, but he also knew that hiding the truth wouldn't help. "Claire, I need to talk to you," he said, indicating the living room. Mrs. Hilda, realizing the seriousness of the situation, discreetly left to give them privacy. Sitting on the sofa, Henry held Claire's hands, carefully choosing his words. "Your mother is having some problems, Robert. Well, he's not handling the divorce well." Claire immediately tensed. Did he do something to her? Did he hurt her? "We don't know exactly what happened. I went to her apartment and she wasn't there, but there were signs of a struggle. The police are looking for her now." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "It's my fault. If I hadn't run away, if I hadn't looked for you—" "No, Claire," Henry interrupted her firmly. "None of this is your fault. You did the right thing by seeking help. The blame lies entirely with Robert for his actions and no one else." Claire wiped her tears with her sleeve. "What are we going to do? We have to help her." "I'm going to help her," Henry corrected gently. "You'll stay here with Mrs. Hilda and Serge. The building has reinforced security and you'll be safe. But I want to go with you," Claire protested. "She's my mom." "Exactly because she's your mom, she would want you to be safe," Henry argued. "And the best way to help her now is by staying where I know you're protected." Claire didn't seem convinced, but nodded reluctantly. "Where are you going?" Henry hesitated again. Should he tell the truth or protect her? "I have an idea of where your mother might be. I'll check, along with the police." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Henry hoped the police would indeed find him in Montauk, though he planned to get there well before them. Claire hugged her father tightly, burying her face in his chest. "Promise you'll bring Mom back?" "Promise?" Henry felt a knot in his throat. "I promise I'll do everything in my power, Claire." After giving detailed instructions to Mrs. Hilda and Serge, and after a long hug with Claire, promising he would bring her mother back safely, Henry left. In the car he called an old friend, Charles, a former police officer, who now worked in private security for Miller Developments. "Charles, I need your help." "It's an emergency." Half an hour later they were on the road to the coast, with Charles driving while Henry explained the situation. "The cabin is isolated, at the end of a dirt road," Henry explained. "There are no close neighbors, which is worrying in this case." "If he really took your ex there, what do you think he intends to do?" Charles asked, his tone serious. "I don't know," Henry admitted, feeling a knot in his stomach. "But Robert has been exhibiting increasingly erratic and aggressive behavior. I fear what might happen if we don't get there in time." Charles nodded, his eyes fixed on the road. "I have a revolver with me. I hope I don't have to use it, but it's good to be prepared." The statement made Henry realize the gravity of the situation they were getting into. Until then, part of him still wanted to believe that everything would be resolved civilly, that Robert, despite his threats, wouldn't go as far as to physically harm Felicity. But the reality was that they could no longer afford to underestimate the man. "Does Robert have a gun?" Charles asked, breaking the tense silence that had fallen. "Not that I know of, but you never know. He has many contacts, and with enough money, you can get anything in this city." The drive to Montauk seemed endless, despite Charles driving above the speed limit whenever possible. Henry's anxiety grew with each mile, and he found himself constantly checking his cell phone, hoping for news from the police or perhaps, by some miracle, a message from Felicity. As they drove, Henry couldn't stop thinking about Claire. The look of fear on her face when he left still haunted him. She had already suffered so much in her short life. She needed stability, not more trauma. What would happen to her if something went wrong today? How would she cope with another loss? When they finally arrived at the small coastal town, it was already getting dark. The lights of houses and establishments began to turn on, creating an almost idyllic scene that contrasted sharply with the grim purpose of their visit. They followed a secondary road that led to more isolated beaches, and then turned onto a dirt road that wound through the coastal forest. "It's on that elevation," Henry indicated, pointing to a small hill in the distance. "The cabin is at the top, overlooking the sea." Charles parked the car a little before the property entrance, hidden among the trees. "Let's approach on foot, without making any noise. If he's there, we don't want to alert him." They walked silently along the trail leading to the cabin, the only sound being the distant waves and the rustling of leaves in the sea breeze. Henry felt his heart pounding against his chest, adrenaline rushing through his veins. He had never been in a situation like this before. His whole life had been dedicated to building, not confronting. When the rustic wooden structure finally appeared among the trees, Henry saw a car parked in front, Robert's black BMW. "He's here," he whispered, feeling his heart race even faster. Charles signaled for them to duck down, and together they approached cautiously. The cabin lights were on, and through the front window they could see inside the living room. Robert was pacing back and forth, gesturing agitatedly. Felicity was sitting in a chair, seemingly unharmed, but with an expression of evident fear on her face. There was a cut on her temple, not very deep, but enough to have caused the blood on the note. "He doesn't seem armed," Charles observed, studying the scene with trained eyes. "But that doesn't mean he's not dangerous. I'll go around to the back while you try to distract him from the front." Henry nodded, and as Charles disappeared into the darkness, he approached the front door. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. What he was about to do was risky, but he saw no other option. He raised his hand and knocked firmly on the door. The sound of the knocks reverberated in the silence, followed by a moment of complete silence inside the cabin. Then he heard hurried footsteps and Robert's voice. "Who the hell is there? Go away." "Robert, it's me, Henry. We need to talk." Another moment of silence, and then the door opened abruptly. Robert was there, his face contorted in a mixture of surprise and anger. Behind him, Henry could see Felicity, still sitting in the chair, now with wide eyes of shock. "How did you find us?" Robert demanded, blocking the entrance. "Does it matter?" Henry retorted, maintaining his calm. "I'm here to take Felicity back." "This is over, Robert. The police are on their way." Robert laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "You think I care about the police at this point? You destroyed my life, Miller. You and your bastard daughter. Everything was fine before you showed up." "Nothing was fine," Felicity's voice sounded from inside the cabin, surprisingly firm despite the circumstances. "I've been unhappy for years, Robert. Claire was mistreated. We were living a lie." "Shut up!" Robert yelled, turning briefly to her. That moment of distraction was all Charles needed to act. Silently emerging from the back door, he moved swiftly, immobilizing Robert before he could react. Henry rushed inside, straight to Felicity. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" She shook her head, visibly trembling, though the cut on her temple suggested otherwise. "I'm fine. He found me at the apartment, said we needed to talk away from everything. When I refused to go, he got furious, started breaking things. I tried to run, but he caught me." "The cut," Henry began, gently touching near the wound. "That was when he pushed me against the wall," she explained, lowering her eyes. "I managed to write that note while he was in the bathroom before we left. I hoped you would find it." Meanwhile, Charles had managed to immobilize Robert, who was now sitting on the floor, his hands bound with plastic ties that the ex-policeman always carried. "You'll regret this," Robert threatened, looking at Henry with pure hatred. "This doesn't end here." "Yes, it does," Henry replied firmly. "You'll answer for kidnapping, violation of a restraining order, vandalism, threats. The list is long, Robert. Your influence won't protect you this time." As if to confirm his words, they heard the sound of sirens approaching. The police finally had arrived. "How did you know where to look?" Felicity asked as they waited for the police to arrive. "The note could have been lost?" "I don't know," Henry admitted. "Instinct, perhaps. Or perhaps because, despite everything, we still know each other well. I knew you would try to leave a clue, and the cabin, well, it was our refuge, wasn't it? It made sense that you would think of it." Felicity's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry for everything, Henry. For every lie, every manipulation. You didn't deserve this." "Claire didn't deserve it. Now is not the time for this," he said gently. "Let's get out of here first. Make sure you're safe. And then we'll have all the time in the world for difficult conversations." The following hours were a whirlwind of testimonies, police reports, and statements. Robert was taken into custody, accused of multiple crimes. Felicity, exhausted but relieved, was examined by paramedics and then taken to give a formal statement at the local police station. The cut on her temple needed a few stitches, but doctors assured her there would be no permanent scar. It was almost midnight when Henry was finally able to call home. speaking with Claire to reassure her that her mother was fine and that they were on their way back to New York City. "Can I talk to her?" Claire asked, her voice small and anxious. Henry passed the phone to Felicity, who was sitting beside him in the car. He watched as she spoke to her daughter, silent tears streaming down her face, as she assured Claire that everything was fine, that she loved her, that they would soon be together again. "I'll be home soon." "My love," Felicity said, her voice choked. "Rest and tomorrow we'll talk more, okay?" "I love you too, very much." That scene somehow symbolized all the emotional turmoil of the past few months. A family shattered by past mistakes, now trying to rebuild something new from the ruins. During the drive back, Felicity remained silent for a long time, looking out the window at the darkness of the road. Finally she spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "I really ruined everything, didn't I?" Henry glanced briefly at her, before returning his attention to the road. "Everyone makes mistakes, Felicity." "Not like mine," she insisted. "I deprived you of knowing your daughter for 12 years. I neglected Claire when she needed me most. I married a man who treated her badly, just because I felt alone and he offered me financial security." She took a deep, shaky breath. "How can Claire even look at me after all this?" "Because she loves you," Henry replied simply. "And because children have an incredible capacity to forgive when they see a sincere effort to change." Felicity nodded, wiping her tears. "I want to change, Henry, truly. I want to be the mother Claire deserves. I know I lost precious years, but if she gives me a chance, she will," Henry assured her. "Claire has a huge heart. She's already worried about you, wanting to see you." Another period of silence, and then Felicity asked hesitantly, "What happens now? With custody and everything?" "Legally, we'll proceed with the request for joint custody as planned," Henry replied. "In practice, I think we need to hear what Claire wants and work from there." Felicity seemed surprised. "You still consider sharing custody with me? After everything?" "I'm considering what's best for Claire," Henry clarified. "And I believe that despite everything, having both parents in her life is important for her. Of course, that depends on you continuing on this path of change." "I will," Felicity promised, with a firmness Henry had rarely seen in her. "For Claire, I'll be better. And thank you, Henry, for coming for me today. You had no obligation after everything I did." Henry shrugged. "We're a family, in a strange and complicated way. Families take care of each other even when it's difficult." It was almost 2 in the morning when they finally arrived at Henry's apartment. Claire, who had insisted on staying awake waiting, ran to the door as soon as she heard the sound of keys, throwing herself into her mother's arms with a sob of relief. "Mom, are you okay? I was so worried." Felicity hugged her daughter tightly, as if fearing she might disappear. "I'm fine, my love. Thanks to your father." Claire noticed the bandage on her mother's temple and touched it gently. "He hurt you." It wasn't a question, but a statement. Felicity nodded slightly, not wanting to lie to her daughter. "A little. But I'm fine now, and that's all that matters." Claire looked at her father, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You brought her back as you promised." "I will always keep my promises to you, Claire," Henry said, touched by the trust in his daughter's eyes. Henry watched the scene with mixed emotions. There was something profoundly right about that reunion, despite all the wrong circumstances that preceded it. That night, no one slept much. Claire insisted on staying in the room with Felicity, who occupied the guest room, which ironically was Claire's own former room before her personalized space was. Ready. Henry could hear them talking softly, occasionally laughing, other times in silence, probably sharing moments that only mother and daughter could understand. In the weeks that followed, many things changed. Robert was formally charged with various crimes, and without his usual contacts to protect him, remained detained awaiting trial. Felicity's divorce was finalized quickly, and she began to rebuild her life, getting a job as a journalist at an architecture and design magazine. Ironically, the same kind of work she had when she met Henry years ago. "It's almost like going back to square one," she commented once, when Henry met her to discuss Claire's visitation arrangements. "Only this time I hope to make better choices." Henry noticed how she seemed different, not just physically, with a new haircut and simpler clothes than the elegant outfits she used to wear alongside Robert, but internally too. There was a serenity in her that he had never seen before, a peace that came from finally living authentically. Claire's joint custody was formalized, with Henry retaining primary custody. Claire continued to live with him, attending Horizon Academy, where she excelled more each day in art classes. On weekends, she spent time with her mother, who now lived in an apartment closer to Henry's, facilitating visits. Claire blossomed in this new arrangement. Having both parents present and engaged in her life brought a stability she had never known. Her talent for art developed rapidly, and her teachers spoke of a bright future in renowned art schools. "Are you happy?" Henry asked her one evening as they dined together in the kitchen. Claire thought for a moment, chewing slowly before answering. "Yes, I think so. It's strange because everything happened so fast, but it's like for the first time I really have a place where I belong." The relationship between Felicity and Claire, once so fragile, began to heal slowly. There were difficult moments, of course. Years of hurt don't disappear overnight. But there were also moments of genuine connection, of shared laughter, of a bond that, though damaged, had never been completely broken. On one occasion, Claire returned from a weekend with her mother, particularly thoughtful. "Is everything okay?" Henry asked, noticing her quietness. "Mom asked for my forgiveness," Claire replied after a moment. "Really, you know? We sat and talked for hours. She told me about how she felt when you two separated, how scared and confused she was. She said she wasn't trying to justify herself. She just wanted me to understand." "And did you understand?" Claire shrugged, that characteristic gesture that now always brought a smile to Henry's face. "More or less. It's still hard to think about all those years, but I want to forgive her. I want us to be a family somehow." And Henry, who had entered this story as a solitary businessman, focused only on his career, discovered a new dimension to his life. Being Claire's father had completely transformed his priorities, his values, his way of seeing the world. He reduced his working hours at the company, delegated more responsibilities, and began to value family time above all else. Teresa, his loyal secretary, noticed the change with approval. "You're different, sir," she commented during a meeting. "Lighter, more present." Henry smiled. "Parenthood changes you, Teresa, in ways you never imagine." "Well, it suits you," she replied with the maternal affection she always showed. "Claire is a blessing in your life." "Yes," Henry agreed, thinking of his daughter. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me." One Sunday afternoon, 6 months after the dramatic events in Montauk, Henry was sitting on his apartment balcony, watching New York City at sunset. Claire had spent the day with Felicity and would be back soon. Reflecting on everything that had happened, he realized how radically his life had changed in such a short time. The sound of the elevator announced Claire's arrival. She entered carrying a large folder of drawings, her face lit up by a smile that warmed Henry's heart every time he saw it. "Dad, look what I did today." She placed the folder on the table and pulled out a large watercolor drawing. It was a portrait of 3 people, Henry, Claire, and Felicity, holding hands with New York City in the background. It wasn't technically perfect, but it captured something essential about each of them, an expression, a gesture, in a way that only an artist with true talent could. "It's beautiful." "Claire," Henry said, genuinely impressed, "you have an incredible gift." "Mom said we're going to frame it and put it in her living room," Claire explained proudly. "And I made a copy for you, too." She pulled another drawing from the folder, a slightly different version of the same portrait. In this one, the sky was bluer, the expressions more smiling. "This is how I see us now," she explained, with the wisdom that always surprised Henry. A different family, but still a family. Henry hugged his daughter, feeling deep gratitude for having her in his life, even if the path there had been full of pain and difficult discoveries. "We are a family," he confirmed. "Imperfect, complicated, but still a family that loves each other." Claire smiled, that luminous smile that was her trademark and that was now an essential part of Henry's daily life. "You know what? I think everything happened as it should. If Mom hadn't hidden my existence, maybe you never would have known me the way it happened. And if Robert wasn't so, Robert, maybe I never would have run away to find you." The observation, so mature and insightful, caught Henry by surprise. "You're wiser than many adults I know, you know." She shrugged in that characteristic gesture Henry had learned to love. "I just think that sometimes, even from bad things, something good can come. Like us, like our family." Henry nodded, hugging her again. Claire was right. From the lies, the hurts, the mistakes of the past, something precious had been born, a second chance, an opportunity to rebuild, to heal, to create something new and valuable from the ashes of what had been destroyed. A few days later, on an impulse, Henry invited Felicity to dinner at his home with Claire. It wasn't a romantic encounter. That chapter of their lives was closed, but a genuine effort to create a healthy family dynamic for Claire. The dinner was initially awkward, with hesitant conversations and occasional silences. But gradually, especially thanks to Claire's innocent energy, the tension eased. There were even some moments of spontaneous laughter, like when Henry burned the dessert and Claire suggested, half serious, half joking, that perhaps he should hire a private chef. "You two together are beautiful," Felicity commented later, when Claire had gone to get her drawings to show her mother. "She has so much of you, not just physically but inside too. That determination, that integrity." "She has things from you too," Henry replied genuinely. "Your artistic sensibility, your way of observing people." Felicity smiled sadly. "Thank you for saying that. Sometimes I wonder if I left anything positive in her or just scars." "We all leave both, Felicity. It's part of being human, of being a father, a mother. The important thing is that now we are trying to do better." At the end of that night, as Felicity was leaving, Claire timidly suggested, "We could do this again, couldn't we? A dinner, the three of us, maybe next week?" Henry and Felicity exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them, the understanding that, for Claire, they would make this effort. "Of course," Henry replied. "That would be great." And as he watched the sun set over the city he had helped build, Henry knew that of all the ventures in his life, the most important was not any of the skyscrapers that bore his name, but this new family they were building together, day by day, moment by moment, with love, patience, and above all, truth. Months passed, and life found a new rhythm. Claire was happier than ever, flourishing in school and in her art. Henry discovered a satisfaction in being a father that he had never imagined possible, and Felicity slowly rebuilt her life and her relationship with her daughter, finding a version of herself that she had lost long ago. There were challenges, of course. Robert tried from prison to create problems for all of them through his lawyers and contacts. But Henry and Felicity remained united on that front, protecting Claire and the new life they had built. 1 year after Claire had appeared at Henry's office door, they celebrated with a small commemorative dinner, just the three of them, as had become a weekly tradition. Claire had prepared a cake with Mrs. Hilda's help, decorated with the phrase "Happy Family Anniversary" in blue icing. 1 year, Henry reflected, looking at his daughter with admiration. Sometimes it feels like you've always been here, and other times it feels like it was just yesterday that you appeared in my office. A year of changes, Felicity added, her gaze softened by time and forgiveness. For all of us. Claire smiled, that luminous smile that was her trademark. The best year of my life, she declared simply. And both parents knew that, despite all the traumas and difficulties, it was true. And so, in the heart of New York City, a small unconventional family found its way, not to perfection, but to something equally valuable: authentic love, truth, and the promise of a future where the mistakes of the past would serve only as lessons, not as chains.